to panel 2, where we'll be moving a step deeper into the topic of mass adoption. Mass adoption comes with other challenges with multiple entry, exit point, causing user friction, but how could we maneuver that? Or is there any way that we could get around that? With us moderating the panel will be Nicholas from Tribe, Shaun from Spartan Group, Dr. Loretta from Smobler Labs, and Lucas from Affyn, who will be speaking live in the room. So do head on in if you have not to. Nicholas, on to you.
Hi, yes, thanks so much for giving us this opportunity, right, to have this session. And, just again, a warm welcome to all speakers for this session today. We're very excited to really hear a bit more about, what we think are the challenges and difficulties and what is actually maybe overstated when it comes to the barriers to entry into the metaverse for the masses, right? So a quick introduction to myself. I'm Nicholas from Tribe, right, product manager for StackUp, a learn and earn platform helping global developers upskill in both Web 2 and Web 3, right? I believe that Affyn has already shared a little bit about the speakers, but to kick things off, I would first like to invite all speakers to first share a bit more about themselves and their endeavors, right? Just to really get things going. So, with that being said, Dr. Loretta, please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. You can just call me Loretta Chen. Hi. So greetings from, where am I now? I'm kind of in a daze. Yeah, I'm actually in Oakland and Pittsburgh, because I'll be giving a keynote in Carnegie Mellon. So forgive me if I'm not the most coherent. I did wake up at 4 a.m. But anyway, I am the co-founder of Smobler Studios, and Smobler Studios is a Metaverse architecture firm. And what we endeavor to do is to bring brands, services, NGOs, nonprofits, and basically anyone, mass adoption. If you want to come into the Metaverse, we're your go-to studio. We would help onboard you and create a Metaverse marketing strategy, as well as to build your worlds for you. So you can definitely quiz me on questions later. I'll be happy to take them as well. And thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Loretta. Next up, can we have Mr. Lucas from Affyn, please?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucas. I'm from Singapore. So good evening, everybody in Singapore. So I'm the founder and CEO of Affyn, and Affyn vision, right? It's to really create fascinating experiences that brings people together through the virtual world and also the real world. So think of Pokemon Go, right? Where we are creating, a metaverse where players can play and earn, and everything they play and earn in the virtual world, right? They can also spend and utilize in the real world. So what we are trying to do is trying to bridge the virtual metaverse, the crypto world, and driving it to mainstream adoption. And although it's a very ambitious project, we believe that if we can achieve this vision of ours, we can really drive and lead the entire blockchain and Web3 industry into the masses. And that it's truly where we are heading towards. Yep.
Thanks, Lucas. Last but not least, Shaun, please.
Thanks, Nicholas. Very glad to be here. Hi everyone. My name is Shaun. I head up Spartan Labs, a $100 million, Web3 venture studio backed by the Spartan Group. So for all those who are not aware of, Spartan Group is actually Asia's leading digital asset investment advisory group that we launched in 2017. And as part of the new evolution of growth, we decided to launch Spartan Labs earlier this year. And the goal is really to invent and launch, breakthrough products within the entire Web3 space itself, with a full stack team of engineers, product managers, marketers, designers, and constantly ask questions around what are better ways of building products in Web3, and how do we actually create a net positive in the entire Web3 ecosystem itself. So before I joined Spartan Labs, I was actually the head of growth and operations at CoinMarketCap. So it's just been in the space for, I would say, close to about 3 to 4 years. Very excited to be here chatting about the Metaverse and the Web3 in general.
Great. Thanks, Shaun, as well. Thanks to all speakers for the great introduction. I think it's obvious to see that everyone is really involved in this whole space, and we have tons to share about what we think really are going to be some of the challenges and the key propositions, right, for people to really start adopting into the metaverse, right? So with that, all that being said, maybe you can really just get the ball rolling, and perhaps we can answer some of the more burning questions, right, with regards to all these myths and challenges on why the adoption of metaverse may or may not be as smooth as you want it to be, right? So perhaps maybe for the first question that really, any of the speakers, please feel free to chime in. What do you think at the moment, right, are really the key factors that will give the masses, right, that strong reason to come into this metaverse space?
I think I'll already just jump in right here since we really are already building the metaverse and we actually have real world scenarios and case studies bringing brands into the metaverse. So just in the last couple of months, we have launched Aventus, which is a graduate school, into the metaverse. We've also taken the food bank into the metaverse, and we also have Young Raja as our digital ambassador. We've launched our NFTs, and we've also have one of Singapore's biggest F&B group. In fact, it is the biggest F&B group in Singapore. I'm not supposed to name them right now, but they've also come on the metaverse with us. So we largely built with Sandbox as well as other leading metaverses, and we work very closely with Animoca brands as well as other hyperreal metaverses. So basically what we do is we bring all these brands and services onto the metaverse, as opposed to some of our players here who are really into the technology. We like to see ourselves more as creators. But to answer your question, I think the number one sort of myth we all find ourselves having to debunk is that I think in October 2021, obviously Mark Zuckerberg did a really great marketing spin by coming up to say that he's going to change his company from Facebook to Meta. But just by that one sort of sleight of hand, what he did was to kind of take the entire conversation and kind of sell the Oculus, right? So I find ourselves really having to debunk the myth that the metaverse is about the Oculus, because he's just really dominated the conversation. Like the only way to enter the metaverse is through the Oculus. And so I think that's myth number one. So to really explain for folks here, and I think most of you are probably even more well-versed in Web3 and metaverse than I am, is that if I had to differentiate the space we're in now, I think you think of Web 1 as the age of information, right? Corporations are able to sort of tell you, it's very one directional. We tell you what we want you to see and hear and think. It's very sort of packaged. Web 2 is the age that we're in now, right? It's the age of social interaction. You have all these different social media platforms, whether it's Twitter or Facebook, but fundamentally you don't own any of these railroads, right? Basically, you're just a user and anyone can pull your accounts away, as has happened. Web3 is really the age we're in, right? So I like to call it the 3 I's, right? It's the age of interoperability, which is all what we're working towards. Identity, where we could bring all of ourselves, and it's more immersive. So I think what we aim to do, at least, is to try to create a conversation with brands, services, the masses, that it is not a revolution. It is really an evolution of where we're already at, right? The way we've evolved from flip phones and then now having the technologies that we have. So I think it is trying to break those mindsets that the metaverse is only all about crypto and NFTs, but it really is a way of us evolving towards a more immersive technology that we are already in. So I think, I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Thanks, Loretta. I mean, yeah, thanks so much for sharing, right? I think it's really definitely a few interesting takes that you provided, right? One is about how conversations can be really kind of like, in a sense, dominated sometimes, right? When, we have big players really sharing about the initiatives, but to the average person, definitely maybe they might be perceiving as, oh, everything, the metaverse is really just about that, right? I can definitely see that as well. And to fully agree, right? Metaverse, taking a step back, the concept really represents more, right, than just what it's currently related to. But before I move on to any other questions, right, I just want to really put it across the question across to Shaun and Lucas as well. Do you have anything to share on that front?
Yeah, Lucas, do you want to go first?
Oh, you can go ahead.
Awesome. I think I'll just add a very quick point to what Dr. Loretta mentioned earlier, right? I think if you look at the entire space or the whole digital asset crypto space over the past, I'll say 3 years, right? 3 years ago, it's probably a lot, a space that's, flooded with traders, investors, people who understand finance, and the likes of DeFis and stuff are being born at that point in time. But I think what we noticed in the past 2 years is that there's this massive on-ramp of, new users who are coming in. These are not your typical traders and investors. These are your people who enjoys, playing certain games. So the gamers of the world, the artists of the world, the entertainers of the world, I think they are all coming into the space and trying to create, something different within the space itself, something that they can own, something that's, part of what they belong to, right? So I think it's really about trying to figure out in terms of use cases, what other use cases could come out of this entire metaverse itself. I don't think we have seen the end of it at this point. I think it's really just a beginning, and sort of look at what happened. I would say I like to always share these examples of, what happened the last month or so, right, with the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard sort of like legal case. And within that same period of time, Johnny Depp launched an NFT collection. And instantly you see a lot of people that sort of come in who are very hesitant to, come in to join a Discord channel, find out what's it about, buy an NFT. But when you have these entertainers who have certain brand power coming in and trying to help drive the narratives towards a certain direction, obviously there are certain use cases that could get worse. But I think in this case itself, you actually see a lot more new users who are just historically very averse to, very cautious about the space, coming in and understanding. I think the key is really about education. It's about understanding what can happen out of this entire metaverse narrative in the next coming years or so.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, right? We are, a lot of us, we naturally fear the unknown, what we don't understand. And honestly, metaverse is so promising, but at the same time, there's so many concepts to it that everyone's still finding their way around, right? And then even more so for the masses who, a lot of the conversation will be dominated through social media, for example. And it's like, who do we listen to, right? What's the good take in that sense, right? Lucas, please, do you have anything to share on that front as well?
Yeah, I mean, being in the crypto and blockchain space since 2016, back then when people come into this space, right, they were in mostly for profit, speculative reasons. People buy it just to make money, right, to flip it. 6 years later, there's a lot of fundamental technological advancement. There's a lot of new trend. There's a lot of evolution in this space. But I felt that, the fundamentals have not changed. 6 years ago, people buy it for profit and speculation purpose. 6 years later, people still buy it for the same reason. And I feel that this is a hurdle in the blockchain, the Web3 space. And in my opinion, right, Metaverse is a hype that also came in because of Mark Zuckerberg and actually spearheaded this thing. But I felt that what fundamentally should happen, right, it's that we should really think of how we can make it much more consumer facing. Now think of in the internet era, it was so complicated for people to come on board. Last time, your HTML or Java, for people to come on board was very complicated, right? Until companies like Apple, like Microsoft, they actually simplified the whole process with personal computer. People using a mouse just to click the folder, right? And people do that need to understand the codes. So that was how it propelled the internet era into mainstream adoption. And I feel that blockchain, Web3, and even the metaverse, this whole hype thing, people are so complicated. It complicates the whole process. So I felt that, if companies really start thinking how to simplify the user onboarding process to make people on board, use it, and don't even need to realize it's crypto or blockchain or Web3 or metaverse, really just focusing on adding value to people's lives, focusing on delivering a great product that people want. I think this will change the whole conversation into what's good, how does it add value to me, what do I like, what's new, right, rather than all the complex terms that many people and big words that people are throwing out. So I felt that companies should really drive in that direction. Ask what consumers want, really try to figure out and talk to people. And when we figure out what even my grandmother can onboard at time, right? And I'm telling you, this will really lead the whole industry into adoption. Be it Web3, be it blockchain, be it Metaverse, it will just be purely about companies and product. And when people don't ask all these questions about talking about all this, right? It's really more about front facing. And when they are on board, right, they don't need to know it's powered by blockchain, because we know blockchain can change everything, right? But the conversation should really be about how we can add value to people's lives. That is my personal opinion. Yes.
So I'm just going to jump in there, and I fully agree with you, but I also just want to sort of set the perspective that I think the reason why there's so much noise and so much conversation on the NFTs and the workings of the blockchain, the NFTs, as well as Metaverse, is because we are in the age of Web 2, where everyone knows about everything. We are in the age of interaction, where even before the things are being built, we are literally flying a plane as we're building it, or we're building a plane as we're flying it. And so I think the process used to be opaque because we did not have a technology to enable us to know that we're actually on a plane that is being built as we're in it. We did not have that technology. We didn't even have that like 10 years ago, right? This is something that is very current. And so if we are able to understand that the reason why there is so much noise is not because companies, producers, creators are complicating it. It's because it's a complicated process when you are R&Ding, when you're learning, when you're creating. It is a complicated process. But if you think back about the days in like the 80s, right, when Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg together with, the gang that is now running Silicon Valley, they were working in their car garages, right? Nobody knows what they were doing, and they all say they're in car garages in their hoodies. And we take that as a sort of success story 30 years on, 40 years on, because that's what they tell us. Because why? That technology had not yet evolved for us to know what they were building in their car garages, right? So I think that it's also important for us to understand that the noise is a function of the era that we are in. And so if we're able to cut the noise and recognize that the noise, just like in the election, I'm not going to go into an election conversation, but I'm just saying the reason why elections just seem so much more complicated and so much more sort of gets all our blood boiling is because everybody knows everything about everybody these days, right? And it gets amplified by social media. So I think it is to recognize, and if we're able to stay focused on the game, what are we building? We're constantly talking to our consumers. We're constantly listening to our consumers. It's just that things are always being, it's not, I don't want to say the word leak. There's no leaking these days. It's just out there, right? Every single conversation is out there. So I think if we're able to just recognize this is the times that we're living in, if we're able to focus, cut away the noise, it is not that creators are making things more complicated. It's just that people are knowing things in real time, and you're knowing things even before the creators themselves have even launched anything. So I think just to set those perspectives clear, and I think it's a perspective that's important to be shared.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Lucas. And thanks, Dr. Loretta, for your takes as well, right? I think definitely a lot of interesting points being brought up, right? When it comes to making things more UX friendly, right? And also, the new degree of transparency that we live in, here today, right, does allow us to kind of comment more, right? And thus generating more like noise in that sense. So far we've kind of really covered, I think everyone has been sharing a good bit of obstacles, right? Be it the fear of the unknown, the noise, and the conversations being dominated by certain parties, etc. And we also be talking about some of the what we think to be some solutions, right? When it comes to like education, awareness, UX friendliness. So perhaps maybe for all of us here who are really just trying to get into this space, maybe some of us are even trying to look into getting projects going, right? Maybe the question that maybe might be on some of our minds is that, so we have these myths and challenges, but we also have these value propositions that can kind of double down on, right? If I'm starting a new project, am I going to, is it my interest, right? Should I be tackling the myths and obstacles, or should I be maybe doubling down on just what is proven to really kind of help drive the adoption instead, right? So you want to remove the barriers, or you want to continue greasing the wheels in that sense?
I mean, sort of to chime in here, I think the point is to make is that when you're building a product, building in Web 2 versus Web 3 actually is not much difference, right? Other than the use of different technologies. I think the fundamental truth is that when we are building a product or you're working on a project itself, are we actually building a solution that solves an acute problem for the user, right? Because everything beyond that, tokenomics, launching a token, launching an NFT, I think those are go-to-market strategies to some extent. Those helps you to acquire new users coming to your platform. But at the end of the day, if you are not building a product that actually solves a problem for a consumer, and that statement is true not just in Web 3, but also in Web 2 and even in Web 1, I think then your project is just in a very slow burn to death, right, in that sense. So I think it's really about asking yourself, what problems are you actually solving in the space itself? And for me to solve the problem, what kind of criteria, what kind of barriers do I have to break through to get to where I need to be, right? And some of the barriers and criteria could be solved by partnerships, right? I think that's also the beauty of Web3, where everything is, to Dr. Loretta's point, interoperable, right? So there are platforms where you build on top of each other, and not everyone needs to take on the entire full stack of like challenges and problems on their own, right? You could be building a GameFi project. Someone else is building like a on-ramp wallet, a wallet to get access into that GameFi project itself, vice versa, right? So I think it's really about trying to understand what problems are you solving, what kind of obstacles are there along the way, can I actually collaborate rather than compete? And I think that's really the essence of Web3 to some extent, where it's really more of a collaborative approach rather than like a one organization take all approach. Yeah, so I think that's probably some thoughts from my end.
Thanks, Shaun. Yeah, I think definitely those points are super relevant, right? I think it makes a lot of sense as well. Focusing on a product has always really just kind of been that key focus that everyone has been talking about. And I think definitely Web3, the whole partnerships, collaborations, and that everyone is just solving different parts of the funnel, right? Some are helping project startups, some are just trying to teach everyone in general about how the Web3 space works, right? So yeah, I think definitely really a good take there. Lucas or Dr. Loretta, any thoughts from your end as well?
So yeah, I mean, what Shaun covered, right? I totally agree. Be it Web 2, Web 3, it's about creating a product that people want. I mean, that should really be the focus point. What problem are you trying to solve? And what I felt what's exciting about Web 3, right? It's unlike during last time, people are always competing each other, companies competing against one another, right? It's a very collaborative effort. The conversation nowadays that we work with our partners, it's about how can we collaborate, how we can partner together, how can we bring Web3 forward to the future together. And that is pretty exciting to me. And it's not just companies nowadays that are doing it. It's also communities. We are trying to bridge the gap between companies and community, because we are, at the end of the day, right, Web3 is about creating a creators economy, where it's about users having a voice in this space. There's ownership, there's interoperability. So with this being said, right, I feel that with Web3 really succeeding, and just now Dr. Loretta, she mentioned it's a journey. Yes, I totally agree. Everybody is learning. It's a new space. So when I feel that in time to come, when Web3 become more evolved, it's going to change a lot of things that what we know of last time is going to be very, very different in the future. Yep.
Yeah, and to follow up on that thought, since we're talking about the future, right? I think it's so exciting that we finally have a chance, like most of us, all of us now, right? We actually have a chance to sit in the driver's seat. I mean, compared to like the Gilded Ages, right? Where I'm just talking about like 20 years ago, where we really relied on like, the Silicon Valley boys. And I'm saying boys specifically for a reason, right? To drive these conversations. But today, I think the point is we are at an inflection point in history, in technology, where all of us are able to participate. And I think that's why there's a noise. But like I said, put that aside and recognize that means power, that means opportunity. And I think to your point as well, Lucas, about talking about the future, I think, I had the opportunity to meet up with Neil Stevenson, where we're at South by Southwest. And one of the ideas that he proposed was the idea of like us living in files, right? That eventually, I think, there's this thought now of, right, we're all now creating all our little ecosystems, and of course the whole point is to make it interoperable, but we even thought and postulated even further that he had this idea when he wrote The Diamond Age that people will increasingly begin to live in files, right? The fact that we'll be able to form like cultural groups, like ecosystem with our own common shared values and interests, right? Which is not demarcated by our physical locations and our physical geographies. I mean, we know that already, but to really begin to conceptualize of a world this way is really exciting, because I think it defies regulation. It defies the way governments know how to govern. And I think there are my lawyer friends that are also listening in, that I think that this presents a great opportunity for everybody, not just technologists, not just the blockchain developers, not just the NFT buyers or collectors, not just folks like us that build on these technologies, but to everybody, because this conceptually fundamentally changes a few things. One, you're now able, because of blockchain technology, it's revolutionary because you're now able to have digital ownership. That's never happened before. And this in itself opens so many doors, leading to the fact that we could potentially have these, what Neil Stevenson, and I borrow his term, called files, right? That we no longer need to be demarcated through Singapore or London or Paris, right? That how do you begin to conceptualize of a world and even govern a world that has that sort of reach? So I think these are issues that should allow all of us to sit up, take notice, and get really excited about, because I think right now, as to all of your point, people are just very focused on one part of the conversation, which is the crypto, right? And I think the fact that this is a crypto bear, I think spend so much more time thinking about how we can build. And to one of the people that actually wrote in chat to me, I'll take the question later. And really, I think the metaverse is such a new fertile ground, and we can make it as good as we want. And I think collaboratively, we can definitely create a metaverse for good, because it really is what we want of it. So I hope more of us demand more good of the metaverse. And yeah, I will just end at that point and then hand it over to our moderator, Nicholas.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Loretta, and thanks, Lucas, as well, earlier for sharing. Yeah, but as Dr. Loretta just kindly mentioned, we are heading towards the end of this session. But so what that means is we are opening the floor to some questions from the audience, right? And really just maybe really helping to kickstart the first question, right? Is one that came up earlier, asking whether the panel could offer any insights into the metaverse for social impact or for social good, right? And this person is exploring a potential use case for a startup, and would love to connect and just to hear your thoughts in that sense.
I'll keep my answer as short as possible. Yes, because we're already creating a metaverse for good. You can Google Loretta Chen, Smobler Studios Metaverse for Good. We've already come out and talked about it in the media. So basically, we have taken Food Bank, and now we're talking to NVPC. For those of you who are sort of global audiences, we're talking to nonprofits, the National Volunteer and Philanthropic Associations. We're trying to see how we can actually galvanize this space and turn it to a metaverse for good. So these are real world case scenarios that we're already working on. We're working with government agencies. We're working with schools to see how we can democratize education. Again, you can go to Web2, Google Aventis, and see what we're doing with Aventis and Smobler Studios. And so there are a lot of these real world scenarios. And also we're working with another project, which I'm not liable to share, but we're really developing a 12 by 12 to really launch a metaverse for good, and also starting an Asian collective to do more things all related to metaverse for good. So definitely happy to have that conversation with you. I saw it in the chat as well. Happy to connect. Thank you. I'll hand it over to my other panelists, Lucas and Shaun.
So the question was it what social good or what? Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, like any insights into how metaverse can really be involved and even empower, right, social impact or social good in that sense.
Okay. So at the end of the day, I personally believe that it comes down to the intention of each individual, right? Some want to do it for social good, some want to do it for profit. At the end of the day, it's come down to intention. So personally, I believe that there will be a wide variety of different companies of different intention and different direction, right? So then there are the companies that want to do it for social good. So personally, I want to do it for social good because that is really much more long term and how it adds value to people. So yeah, I mean, to keep the answer very short, right? We want to do it for social good and to inspire other companies to also do the same.
Awesome.
I think
Shaun.
maybe this is a quick point on it. I think like what we're talking for the past 20 minutes or so, end of the day, when you're building on Web3, you're building for a community itself, right? So when you think about social good, how do you actually unite a community of different participants who are empowered or who wants to contribute to the same cause? I think that's where leveraging on technologies on the Web3 front, be it NFTs, be it building on a metaverse. I think that's where you can actually connect and an entire community together. And I think a lot of time, I think that's really the power and the ownership of it, right? When you actually own something within the entire metaverse itself, you are doing something that's allowing different groups of people who actually buys into that same cause to be part of that same thing with you. And I think those sounds abstract. I think that's where it's really the ability to connect the community that's the most important part in building, be it for social good or for profit.
Thanks, Shaun. Yeah, I mean, talking about connection, Dr. Loretta was also talking about a new age and wave and degree of participation from anyone, right? And Lucas talking about, like it also boils down to the will, right? And I think there's one really interesting question from Shazan from the audience, right? Asking about our thoughts about, given that we're connecting with people and that there's so many people who's going to come to this space, what are our thoughts about creating a safe space, right, for people in this metaverse? Because more people means more differences, right? And but at the same time, yeah, it's definitely, I imagine it'll be quite interesting kind of thought to have about how the metaverse can really provide these safe spaces, if any.
Yeah, I'll just jump in really quickly. I mean, first off, I kind of liken, the metaverse to this sort of concept of democracy, right? It is an ideal, but it does not stop us from wanting to pursue it. Some people die for it and fight for it, right? And we see democracy in existence every single day. People are fighting, like in the United States, we have people really upset now protesting over Roe v. Wade, etc. I mean, constantly democracy is an exercise that allows us to exercise our freedoms. I think that's exactly the kind of freedoms we're having now in the metaverse. And I think it's really interesting because all of a sudden, folks are having these opportunity to exercise the agency, and they're like, what do we do about it, right? We're so used to being told what to do in technology that we never really had a chance to own anything, that all of a sudden it's like, what do we do? And I think my sort of overarching argument is that I really hope that we can have, to your point, some common consensus to ensure that we do no harm to children or to vulnerable populations, right? Because we see enough of that in the real world. I don't think that we should bring the ills that we have, or the walls that we have in the real world, or IRL, into the metaverse that we built. So I only hope that players and new players coming in who understood what it's like to be disenfranchised in the real world, to not have a voice in the real world, to really take this opportunity to see how those of us who are already in the space, or bigger players who are in the space and communities in the space, to really take stewardship of the metaverse, so as not to allow it to descend to some sort of abyss, right? Because fundamentally, I mean, you do need to be an idealist to want to be in this space and play such a big part, as I am. So I truly believe that the technology should still fundamentally serve humanity, right? The metaverse is, after all, a human endeavor. I really want to emphasize this. I can't emphasize this enough. And of course, there's going to be detractors. There's going to be folks that will prey on the fact that the space is open. And again, I think it is evolutionary, right? I think erecting too many walls too early is not really a good thing. But I think eventually, if we are told and if we want these freedoms, we should also begin to exercise self-discipline in what we do as creators. So again, my final note before I pass on to our other panelists is that I really hope that we can see more trifectas, right? Public-private partnerships, right? Where we begin to really take ownership of the space, but yet also ensure that we don't replicate the ills that we see IRL, right? And this is why we want to have this metaverse for good. Shaun, Lucas?
So, I mean, technology, right? There is no good or bad technology. There's just whether good intention or bad intention, right? And in every evolution, in every revolution, it's always led by innovators, right? The early adopters, the leaders, right? And if we can really group up together and rally together to really lead and show how it's going to be done, right? With goodwill. There's definitely, like Dr. Loretta, she mentioned, there's going to be bad actors, okay? But as long as we continue doing what we do with good intention and to show how it's going to be done, we will be able to lead it forward to really create safe space for the mass adoption to really come in. So regardless of what's going to happen, right? Technology is going to be there. It cannot be ignored already, right? After so many years, blockchain technology, Web3. So it's really come down to the leaders coming together to show and create that culture that we are here to build technology, build this whole space and lead the masses, forward into the future together. So whether safe space or not, it really comes down to people already, not technology. Yeah. So back to you.
Thanks, Lucas. Sorry. Just quick note. The session is coming to an end, so maybe some closing thoughts from Shaun as well, please.
Yeah, I think just to take a more product approach to the question of, how do you create a safe space, right? I think end of the day, when you're building a community, I know we are all moving towards trying to drive mass adoption, but at the same time, I think we have to be very mindful of not moving there too quickly, right? Because you tend to then attract, the negative players in the whole ecosystem itself. So back to how do you actually create a safe space in the metaverse itself? My thought process is always start small, create a community, start with maybe a community of 50, right? 10 to 50 people of people who actually buy into whatever that you're trying to create in the space itself, right? And from there, you grow organically through word of mouth, through the people who are in the community itself. Because if you don't sort of gate it from the beginning, you sort of open it up to like the mass audience right from day one, it's a lot harder to then gate it or create safe environments where you are attracting people who are in for the different reasons, right? I think that's where it's harder to gate or to do some constraints around it at that point in time. So it's always about going back to fundamentals. Start small, build a community of very passionate people who buy into your cause, and then grow organically from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Shaun. And a big thanks to all speakers. I think I hope that everyone has really learned a lot and really kind of got our brain juices going about how we can really see the next stage of metaverse adoption, right? And yeah, a big thanks to this opportunity to kind of moderate this session. And I would just like to hand the mic back over to the event organizers.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you.